So this is our last event of the day, and our scheduled guest couldn't make it, and we had a flat earther, we had a young Earth creationist, and a atheist YouTuber, and all three of them either backed out, didn't respond, or just couldn't make it. So this is it. Gaspar, and do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah.
Just give it a brief background.
Yeah. So, yeah, I go by Gaspar, and I have a small community I've been building on Facebook and some other platforms that is primarily centered around the use of logic and argumentation, and an emphasis on examining argument formats, and over actually with a priority on validity over actually examining truth, because I think any of us who are interested in philosophy have found that sometimes it's hard to progress past the initial process of arguing over definitions and categories. And so it's nice to have a place or a specialized context where a person can focus on validity and argument form with certain givens, and where definitions and actual material truth are maybe placed on the back burner. Not that that's an implied philosophical position itself, not to imply that validity is more important than truth and soundness. It's just that it's just more of a specialized tool. And so I found that it's a pretty interesting kind of conversation. I, for one, certainly don't like getting caught up arguing over semantics and definitions. So that's kind of what I'm about for the most part.
All right, so we have a philosopher. So I'm already out of my depth. Hopefully you guys can carry me and pick up the slack. All right, so we're going to be talking philosophy. I still don't know if you're a believer or non-believer. Don't say it yet. What else? This is going to go out in a couple of weeks, and I will highly edit it. So if just to let you know up front that if there's anything you accidentally said you don't want out there, just let me know immediately so I can cut that part out. And my first book, I wrote 2 books. The opening chapter of my first book deals with agreeing on definitions. So I think I can find some common ground with you there. And yes, you're right. You get caught up on definitions too much, but I still think it's invaluable to agree on the correct definitions before you even start. And you shouldn't get bogged down in it. For instance, I get into an conversation with a fellow atheist, and he's got a different definition of what atheism means. Let's say he goes off the strict Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy definition, and I'm going with the colloquial definition. Now, for us to continue forward, one of us is going to have to bend to the other one's definition. And often it's me, and I'll go with, okay, you know what? Philosophically, I am not an atheist. There. Are you happy? Now, can we continue on? Philosophically, I'm an agnostic. Everyone here is an atheist, really only colloquially. Yeah, I don't know if you guys knew that. But so I'm willing to, sometimes one party has to be willing to bend and just to agree on a definition. Anyway, do you guys have anything to add right off the bat?
No, I mean, if it's going to be definitions, they're going to define us. Basically, if I get to set the definitions, I'll already win the argument. Because if I get to set all the parameters, you can set it up so that you can't fail.
What if you both agree and they still feel like they have a strong argument? That's what ideally you want. Both of you have a strong argument, and both of you agree on definitions, and then you go from there.
Well, it's kind of like if their view of faith is the biblical one, it says faith is substance and evidence, because that's what the Bible says. And I'm saying, well, no, because I can have faith in Islam.
And don't get started on faith.
And if it's the same faith, that means I just have as much substance and evidence as his faith that it is. Because you're counting faith.
That's a whole. In fact, I wouldn't mind talking about faith if that's where Gaspar wants to go with it, because that literally is an entire episode just to talk about faith.
So if someone says that he's an atheist, you get to define what his atheist is, colloquial or otherwise?
Well, that's why you're talking to me.
Well,
Yeah.
Let's say it again.
If I say I'm an atheist, you get to define my atheism.
Let's say our discussion depends on us agreeing on the definition of atheism, and I use the SEP, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and use the colloquial. One of us has to bend. One of us has to
What is
concede.
the colloquial?
The colloquial is a person who lacks belief in a deity. The philosophical version is a person who, it's more the active atheism, the one who disbelieves in a God, not just not believes, but disbelieves. Even if you say, I have no burden of proof, you still at least minimally have a secondary burden of providing justification for your position. You see what I'm saying? It's more of a positive atheism in the philosophical sense.
You're not just saying I don't believe in God. You're saying I don't believe. I don't believe in your God. You're saying I know your God doesn't exist. That's.
I don't believe in God, and I believe there are no gods. That's two different
Yes.
claims. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Gaspar,
Yeah. What's up?
talk.
Talk?
Yeah.
Say,
Do you want me to give you my view, or do you want me to give an opinion about what y'all just said, or
no, give us a topic.
Okay, we can talk about that whole topic about atheism, proof for God, faith, things like that. I'm totally, I have a lot of those conversations pretty regularly.
So I guess as a baseline, I guess regardless of what your personal position on God is, I mean, do you think that we can arrive at truths about God with logical argumentation alone?
So I'd say probably not. So this is where I'd kind of just invoke Russell's teapot. First of all, we've already covered, just to backtrack just a second, we've already covered the issue of definition. So first of all, it would depend on your definitions. If you're not being allegorical or metaphorical in your use of God, and you're actually saying it's a entity external to the universe that we've observed, then I would say it has the same status as Russell's teapot, which it could either exist, it either could not exist, and so the question next is whether there's any evidence to support it, you can try to connect arbitrary dots, but ultimately you're not going to be able to know what's behind that closed door. So if it's an actual God that's supposed to be external, that created the universe, as far as rigorous deduction goes, there's not going to be a way to prove that. I don't think there's any way to prove it. There are people who try to make cumulative probabilistic cases for it. Those are maybe some of the more sophisticated theological arguments that I've run across. But the question is, does that evidence actually support the conclusion? I mean, you can chalk up evidence to support many conclusions based on what noise you decide to filter out.
If the evidence is not testable, repeatable, verifiable, predictable, and falsifiable, doesn't evidence, I'm talking specifically about just weak evidence that can't be repeated or falsified. Is that subjective based on the beholder?
Wait, so what was the last question?
Like evidence that can't be tested using any of those criteria. Can't, what you consider evidence, I don't. It's all based on personal preference. It's all just subjective.
Okay, so everything you listed before is more or less the empirical science route of repeatability. If we're not
necessarily, because predictable and testable, empirical implies observable evidence, but a lot of testable and predictable and even falsifiable evidence does not necessarily have to be empirical.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That sounds right. So, okay. So, and then you said, and then you followed it up by saying that if it's not in that realm, then more or less it's going to be arbitrary, right?
Yeah. Don't you think?
I do think that, actually. And I do think there's actually a place for that pure philosophical reasoning. Okay. So this is where, maybe the categories we make are going to be less grounded to material phenomenon, and but we can still reason validly about them. We can still make deductions about these softer categories. So it is still useful to reason about such subjective information, but you're not going to have any truth beyond simple abstract philosophical truth. So you're not actually going to know materially if there is, the teapot floating out there. You can just reason about it in an abstract way, That's what I think.
Without it, it just seems like it's just going to be a fun pastime. No one's going to change each other's minds without the hard stuff, without the hard evidence. And it's going to just boil down to personal opinions.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's one of the big problems with things like philosophy of mind. So, like, for example, in neuroscience, they figure out some really interesting stuff. That's because they're observing things and they're testing stuff. But when it comes to philosophy of mind, you have people arguing over, basically, the analogy I use is they're arguing over definitions, which equates often to how to slice a pizza. So, it's just people arguing about whether they want to slice a pizza in fourths or eighths, but, it's the same pizza, but they all have different agendas. So they're basically hung up on how to organize their categories and definitions. And, if it's a theist, they're always going to have a free will slant on their definitions in philosophy of mind. And, a person who is maybe has a lean towards determinism is going to have different definitions as well. So, so basically, yes, for the most part, it does come down to entertaining, rationalizing about possibly imaginary categories, like you said.
Yeah. Chris?
So what to your view is, if we can make logical arguments about things that may or may not actually exist, what to your view is the value of having these kinds of discussions if there's no actual real world application to the specific argument at hand?
Okay. The thing is, although they may not exist materially, and I'll just lay all this out for you since you asked my personal view. You also mentioned that I may have the assumption that they have no real world application. Well, I don't know if y'all have heard of Joseph Campbell, but I'm kind of a big fan of Joseph Campbell. So although I may not believe that there is actually, a teapot or a God floating out there that created everything, I do think that it's useful for humans to anthropomorphize things in a literary symbolism type way. Some of the most meaningful information to humans is people doing things. And that's how people in memory championships and stuff, they turn data, they turn information into people doing stuff, and then you'll remember it just for months and months. Not just that, it's more meaningful. And so I think a lot of the in myths and somewhat mystical traditions, I think they use they will anthropomorphize certain things in nature to try to emphasize certain aspects of it and make it more meaningful. And this is a whole other conversation. It's used in certain forms of prayer and meditation to get into certain altered states of minds. Now, all sorts of myths have grown up about whether all sorts of folks in myths have grown up about people gaining magical powers by doing this. Now, obviously, that stuff is unsubstantiated, but the states themselves, we've seen these characters like Wim Hof, the Iceman, who has gained a certain amount of control over certain processes that are typically involuntary.
What?
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that.
It's a good case study. You can read about the Iceman. He can basically maintain his body temperature in really, really low temperatures that would normally be lethal to a human, similar to what the Tibetan Tumo monks do.
Right.
Now, whether you think this has any supernatural bearing is just totally beside the point, in my opinion. It's more that people use these meaningful myths.
For everything he can do, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally, and there doesn't need to be any woo involved, and all the mythological symbolism that grows up around maybe the monks that do these sorts of things in the Himalayas. I would say, when they cultivate these abilities by contemplating some goddess or whatever, it's that's the most meaningful type of information to help a person get their mind in that kind of state, because we've learned through the history of poetry and literary symbolism that we find turning natural things into humans to be more meaningful than leaving them in their forms as inanimate objects. So that is to me. So to answer your question, that to me is the practical application of at least entertaining a purely subjective concept of these imaginary things. So just getting back to the question.
So you guys, let me throw out Russell's teapot. Everyone familiar with that concept?
Yeah.
You're not. Okay, that and determinism. I used to know. I get my philosophical tenets confused. So can you explain for those of us that don't know Russell's teapot and determinism?
Okay, so Russell's teapot is basically the concept. It's meant to sort of be an allegory, and it's. I don't totally remember if it was meant specifically to address the problem of theism, but here it is. It's basically, there could be a teapot orbiting the Earth out in space, and I can't prove that there's not. Okay, but that's not reason to prove that's not reason to believe that there's a teapot, and I can't really prove anything about it. So what warrants belief in the teapot?
Yeah, right. Okay. I knew that one. What's determinism now? Okay,
so determinism is, I don't want to put forth I don't want to assume a false dilemma, but its rival is free will. The idea that in our minds we actually make our decisions, and they more or less arise spontaneously through the agency of our own consciousness. Now that's free will. The opposite is determinism, is that all of our decisions and our consciousness and pretty much everything are determined through kind of mechanical clockwork, typically by things like, biochemistry or neurology and things like that. Or, basically all of our decisions are just a domino in the middle of a long line of dominoes.
Is determinism close to Calvinism, like predestination, like everything's already written out in a book somewhere?
So what I've heard about Calvinists is that they are determinists, and I know that the various other sects of Christianity are not particularly fond of that. Beyond that, I'm not overly acquainted with the more esoteric sides of Calvinist belief, but I have simply heard that they are determinists, but I don't know the facts about it.
I want to ask you guys, based on what you've heard from Gaspar so far, who thinks he's a Christian? Hands? Who thinks he's an atheist?
I'm still an atheist.
No. Who thinks Gaspar is a Christian or atheist? What do you, he
He
hasn't said yet.
hasn't
So based
said
on what
yet.
he said so far, what do you think?
Well, you can't really tell, because a Christian believes both in free will and basically like predestination.
Gun to your head. What is Gaspar? A believer or non-believer?
He's a philosopher.
When he first started talking, I thought he was a believer. Now I'm starting to think he's an atheist.
I would guess some sort of deist.
Yeah, you do too?
I would say some sort of deist.
I don't know.
Oh, maybe a deist?
He is.
You think a deist
So
too?
maybe he could be a deist where he's not stating any particular God yet, but I don't even know if he's believes in any gods or no gods yet.
I'm going to go with atheist now, but originally when he first started talking, I thought he was a hardcore Christian.
I'd say he's an atheist only because if he was a Christian by now he would have said so.
Ooh, that's a good point. Okay, time to show your cards, man. What's your theological persuasion?
So typically I let, because as we discussed at the beginning, I don't like arguing about definitions. I'll typically let someone pin whatever they want on me, and be completely forthcoming, answering any questions that they have about what I believe. So basically, what y'all are mainly asking is, do I believe in a deity or not? No, not really. So I don't have any reason to believe in an objective God, but I mean, as I said, I am actually a fan and enthusiast of myths. I just handle them in a subjective manner. And I believe myths and poetry are meant to help facilitate shifts in our subjectivity. So, but I don't think any theist would be happy with that. What theists really want is to prove definitively that a God objectively exists. If someone wants to personify Mother Nature as this really harsh female who just wants us to mate and die, that might be a really, meaningful and useful way to personify that aspect of nature. But that would be the degree to which I believed in a God, as that kind of metaphor, you see. But the theists wouldn't be happy with that, and they probably wouldn't own me, So, I ultimately let the people who are talking to me decide what they want to call me, because ultimately I don't care about how the categories are, allocated.
Steve McCrae would probably kill me for using the Dawkins scale because it doesn't align with his philosophical definition of atheism. But for right now, I'm just going to use the Dawkins scale, 1 to 7. 1 meaning I know for a fact there is a God, and that God is X God, Yahweh of the Old Testament, for instance. And a 7 meaning I know for a fact there is no God. And I've met maybe this many 7s in my life. Most atheists who call themselves atheists are 6s at best.
I'm a 6 if you said every possible God. I'm a 7 if it's an Abrahamic God.
I'm right there with you. I'm like a 6.99 with Yahweh, but I'm more like, I'm going to say it, I'm about a 5 with any divine intelligence in general. So I'm the weakest atheist you'll ever meet. I'm beyond de facto. I'm about a 5 as far as like any divine intelligence.
So you're not a 7 or a 6. You're a 5 when you open it up to any possible
like a deistic,
a deistic God. Well, to me, I'm like a 6.9 of any God and a 7 for the Jewish, the Christian, and the Abrahamic one. And only because they made certain statements that, and I have to clarify that. If you're saying you're a Christian and you think the Bible is like mostly true, then that have to be a 7. If you say, oh, well, the Bible is all metaphors and parables, okay, then you go to 6.9 because it's opened it up to be all kinds of stuff. But when it says Adam and Eve, and Adam and Eve has to be real, it goes to a 7.
What would you put yourself as a proposition that an intelligence smarter than us set the universe in motion?
I'd have to say still 6.9 because what set it in
I
motion?
can't get any higher than 5.
I look at it, Occam's razor, I just don't see anything. I don't see this being designed, because if it was designed by any being better than me, it would be a nicer place.
Yeah.
I would build a nicer place.
Is anyone close to a 5?
What's a 1 and what's a 10?
4 is the middle of the road. Like, I don't fucking know. I'm the true blue agnostic. I don't want to even think about it kind of deal.
What's 5?
5 is... I think 6 is de facto atheist. 5, I forget, weak atheist. Yeah. So 3 is like a de facto theist.
Yeah, 3 is an average Christian.
I think a 5 is, I tend not to think that this is the case. I'm inclined to believe otherwise. 6 is, I'm fairly convinced that there is no God, but I'm open to, that's why most atheists are 6s. Yeah, most atheists are 6s.
How far does it go up?
7.
7 is, I know for a fact there is no God.
If you're an 8, you're Aaron Ra.
Aaron Ra's 8. So, yeah. That's what, I don't know how you got me off on that, Gaspar. Where would you put yourself on that scale?
Okay, so if we're calling it an objective creator that initiated even the first process of the universe, like the Big Bang, well, let's see. It's tough. Just, I don't know, like up there around like a probably like a, I don't know, a 7 or something.
No.
There's just
a 4 means middle of the road. An atheist means there's no way. A 1 means for certain God did it.
Yeah.
So if you're a 4, it's like I don't really know. Now if it's like I think that God started things, but I don't know what God was. But I kind of think it's that one. Then you'd be kind of like maybe a 3. It was kind of like, I don't know, but I don't really think it did. I don't really know. You might be a 5.
Yeah.
And then if you get like, well, I really, really, really don't think it happened, it goes to a 6. And then if it's like for certain, it's
Yeah. If it's outside of the realm of allegory or metaphorical symbolism, like what I mentioned, and it's supposed to be an objective entity, I'm up there like around a 7 or something. And I'll tell you why. There's a certain scenario that I've ruled out, a certain specific one. Now, again, we all know you'll run into just about any species of definition on any topic. You'll run across Christians who will say God can't necessarily do anything. But if omnipotence means that God can, make A equals not A, or can make himself a non-God. Now, I know that some people consider that a cheap shot, but I think that that's only because it's so damn simple.
Like
if you're
a married bachelor or
a square circle.
a square circle or
yes,
7,
it's
whatever you want to be
Yeah.
is what he can do.
yeah, and so if and theists have a slippery way of getting around this. They say, no, we never claimed God could do anything. Omnipotence means all powerful. That's what it says in the Bible. It's like, okay, whatever, call it whatever you want. But if you're saying there's a being that can make an apple a non-apple at the same time, I'm saying that being doesn't exist via what we call indirect proof or proof by contradiction. Okay, so if you can prove a contradiction, then that means you have proven something false.
He's
Okay.
He's right where I'm at. He's right where I'm, because basically what he's saying is the Bible says that you have free choice and God knows the future. Those are 2 logically incompatible deals.
I can already tell I want this kid back on our show when we have a believer on.
Kid?
Huh?
I'm 30, man. You calling me a kid?
Well, I'm 50.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
You're
When you
goddamn.
get on recess, you can come here for us. Yeah.
Dude, you're a baby here if you're 30. Anyway, Chris, go ahead.
I was what you were bringing up in regards to logic, that's something that I'll see come up with atheist arguments with theists, and the way theists will try and get out of it is they'll say, well, God can do anything that's logically possible. Right?
Yeah.
So God can't create a rock.
That's their fail-safe.
But the thing is, the free will and being able to know the future, because they all the things in the Bible, all the prophecies, prophecy has to be real for Christianity to be real.
Yeah.
If prophecy is not real, ding ding, it's bullshit.
Can I bring up?
Go
Go ahead.
There's that, and God is supposed to also be the creator of logic, according to people like Frank Turek and others.
Yeah.
Or God is bound by logic,
Yeah.
which he can't be because he's God, and there's
Yeah.
nothing more powerful.
Well, the thing is, you could have a God that can do all the things. Well, actually, you can't have a God that does all the things in the Bible because it's like having a square circle. The only way you can have a God in the Bible is to say, okay, God can have a square circle. He knows the future. You have free will. Basically, he bends logic to his will. In which case, it's nonsense because there may be a heaven, there may be hell. We don't know what the hell he's doing because he's just a non-logical God.
Yeah, we say he's not all powerful, but he's way more powerful than you can possibly imagine what he create universes. I'd be cool with that, but it's like, no, he's got to be all powerful or else he's not.
It's that omni part you have a problem with.
Yeah. And can I jump in on this real
Sure.
quick? Like, okay, so let's grant that for a minute and be as open-minded as people want. It's like, okay, so maybe there's a God who he's writing the laws of logic. Okay, back to Russell's teapot. It's like, have we seen any evidence for that? Is there any reason for us to believe it? That's the question. Like,
No, that's all right. You keep going.
yeah, and so there seems to be, I used to frequent a lot of transhumanist and futurist forums because they're all about like, oh yeah, let's upload our minds and biological longevity, and I think that's cool stuff. But I started seeing the simulation theory become pretty popular in those circles.
Here we go.
And to me,
The Matrix.
I blame Elon Musk because like it seems like he mentioned
Keanu Reeves.
yeah. Well, okay. So anyway, To me, the simulation theory is basically just a hipster version of theology. I think the simulation theory can essentially be debunked by all the arguments that atheists have diligently put together against theism.
Why are more and more experts in the field, specifically physics and anything quantum, why are more and more of them accepting the possibility that simulation theory is true?
I've heard that some do. I've heard that some don't. I don't know if there's actually a trend or not, So like when people say something like that, like why is there a growing trend? I always, that's something we can question, is there actually data indicating that there is a trend in sentiment? And then the next question is, physicists like philosophy just like everybody else. I'm sure they ponder all sorts of interesting things in their spare time.
Yeah, but I don't really like the idea of your brain in the vat or something like that, because the only time to start believing your brain in the vat is if you have evidence that might be true.
Right.
Otherwise, you just stop. And Occam's razor stops you at all these crazy things because you can think of any crazy
Because you're multiplying unnecessary assumptions.
Yeah, it's like free will or not free will. Okay, on one hand you have free will, one hand you have predestination. If you're true predestination, it's all predestined. Imagine you live your life completely predestined. That means somebody comes over and steals all my money. I don't do anything because he was just destined to do that. If he rapes and kills my kid, heck, I guess it was just destined to do that. I should never be mad at anybody for anything because it was just destined to do it.
Andy, I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to take a little sidebar here and a quick tangent. We'll come back. All of you try to remember the place we're at right now, bookmark it.
Okay.
So I'm going to go into a Facebook feud that I think I'm still embroiled in right now. So I'm going to ask Carl. All right, Carl.
I love drama. I love Facebook.
Right. No, it's just it's a friendly discussion. It's not a feud.
By the way, Gaspar, I am the least qualified of anyone here to discuss anything, but I plan to jump in a lot in this one.
I'm going to ask you, because you haven't talked much. In this conversation thus far, pretend you're a Christian right now. I'm going to ask you, is there evil on earth?
Yes.
Why is there evil on earth?
Because of Satan.
Right, but God wants us to be able to commit evil because he wants to give us
free will.
Free will. When we die and go to heaven, do we also have free will up there?
Sure.
Of course we do, because we want to keep our identity, our souls, right? We want to keep ourselves intact. If free will exists in heaven, does evil exist in heaven?
Gaspar, you remember when I said I was the least qualified? Oh, yeah.
Now this is where I'm at,
Yeah.
and I'm getting hit by theists from all different angles of this conversation, and I hold true to now. And one theist went on a fringe, and he said, "Well, the original post didn't really necessarily speak exactly to mortals. So the 1/3 of all of heaven rebelled against heaven and went to hell.
Yeah.
So
if I go to heaven and have free will, I can sin and end up in hell.
Satan and 1/3 of every angel up there had free will and committed evil and got banished. But I'm not talking about angels. I'm talking about fucking mortals right now.
Okay.
All right. So mortals, if we have free will and free will entails the ability to commit evil.
Yeah.
And if there is no evil in heaven, how the hell can we be in heaven? And okay, go.
I'll be the here. Hold on, Christian hat. Yoink.
Yoink.
When we get to heaven, we will be so grateful and thankful and in awe of God's presence that we won't even have the desire to commit evil.
Does that limit free will then?
We will still be capable of it. We just won't want.
Well, that actually is a pretty good explanation.
No, what actually is you have free will, but what happens is you're up there having free will, and as I said, it's either God is so awesome that we don't want to sin because we're in his presence, or what has to happen is he being there, the free will really has to be turned off, or you have to revitalize it, because if you're, it's like, why put us here and give us free will? I guess it's only to see if you get in heaven or not. Once you get in heaven, we turn free will off, and you're there.
Then you're not quite yourself then.
You're a
I want to
robot.
hear what
You become
Gaspar
a
has to say
robot.
about it, but first, Chris.
Okay, I'll make it seem more of a mind fuck.
Oh, okay.
I don't want more of it.
So heaven.
My mind's already fucked.
So heaven, there's probably something wrong with this, and Gaspar can probably figure it out. Heaven is eternal, which means it really does not have a time dimension to it. It's outside of time as we know it. But the ability to decide to rebel requires a passage of time to go from not rebellion to rebellion.
There had to have been a point in what time when Satan decided to do it, right? It didn't happen at the beginning of time. It didn't happen now. It had to happen somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
So time has to have some sort of relevance up there. Go ahead.
Wouldn't God have the power to keep Satan from turning?
Maybe that was part of his plan all along. Gaspar, what do you think?
Yeah. Okay, so I listened to all the answers, but one thing I wanted to ask you without interrupting was, can you just clarify the thought experiment again, real quick?
I was asking Carl to put on his atheist hat. I said, does evil exist? Oh, I'm sorry, Christian hat, sorry. And does evil exist on the earth? Yes. Where did I go next?
Yeah.
Yes. Why does evil exist? Because of free will. So when we get to heaven, we still have free will. Yes. Is there evil in heaven? No. Well, if you have free will. Now, this is another thing on the Facebook feud. This is where I started getting into sticky territory, where if we have free will up there, they said, despite, we're basking in God's presence and we don't want to sin. We don't want to commit evil. But it's not logical to think that there's going to be not one soul up there. If we all have free will, there's going to be at least one soul up there that's going to just want to commit an evil act.
Okay, so I think I understand
Okay.
the question now. So so if evil exists as this sort of simulation for our free will to overcome, so to speak, and the question is ultimately, if we get to heaven, do we still have free will, and are we able to commit any evil in heaven? And if we're not, then do we still have free will? And I'd say just clearly, if we're not able to commit evil in heaven, theoretically, then I guess we don't have free will, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but why not just make the robots ahead of time? Because that's what we're up in heaven at the end anyway.
Well, then no
And
free
I
will.
think the other question is, aren't the cool kids in hell anyway?
Yeah, but I have this really hyper sharp sense of eternity, not fully, because no human can understand eternity fully, but I think my perception of eternity is at least double of most humans. I don't know why. That's why I said if God were proven to me, I would fall on my knees. I would not rebel. I would be right up his ass.
Is it because of hell?
I don't know.
If there
It's just
wasn't
me
a hell,
personally. I feel that I am closer in touch with what it means to be eternal. I don't know why. Maybe I've thought about it much. Gaspar, maybe too. Anyone that's my first year of college was a philosophy degree. I changed majors, but I really feel like I'm close. I'm very in touch with the concept of eternity. And if you don't want suffering for any fraction of eternity, I would avoid that at all costs.
Yeah, but the thing is,
I'm here. Can I interject something real quick? All I'm hearing about free will is negative things. Can't you have free will and do good things?
Yeah,
You can
do anything you want. That's what free will is.
Okay, but so it seems like everybody in here is saying free will is evil.
Well, let me say this.
That's because originally God put us down here, and our first act of free will was to eat the stupid apple.
I didn't need no apple.
I know, well, that doesn't matter.
Well, the pomegranate, remember? The pomegranate or the date.
The fruit, whatever it was.
Apples are not indigenous to the Levant.
So
I'm a freak. I go to Sunday schools
So free
more
will-
now than I did when my parents were raising me. And so I was in a summer Bible school class as an atheist, and they knew I was an atheist. And I brought up something. I said to a lady, she was just a lay person. She wasn't one of the leaders. And I said, because she had a daughter that was an atheist. That's what it was. Your daughter's an atheist. Now, I don't want to be morbid, but if your daughter dies before you, whenever she dies, and then you go to heaven, can you enjoy heaven to its fullest maximal extent, knowing that your daughter is burning in a lake of sulfur for eternity? That's another one. So now we're up in heaven, we're enjoying life, but now we have a family member that's down there, and we're conscious of them burning forever.
I think God would just hide it from us.
possibly that
That limits our free will then.
possibly we won't be conscious of anybody.
Or he'll change our minds so that, hey, we will know why your daughter deserves to burn, and so you'll be happy
It
because
still limits
you'll understand how evil she really
it
was.
still rewires our being, doesn't it? To
Yeah.
change something in our nature.
But the whole thing is just one piece of nonsense on top of another. It's
Yeah.
like talking about leprechauns and unicorns and Harry Potter. And unfortunately, these people start making our laws and tell us what we can and can't do. And so that's why I'm pissed.
Mhm.
I was going to say, putting on my Christian hat again. Didn't take it off the first time.
You missed the sound effect.
Yoink. Yoink.
Excellent.
Yeah. I had to oil that hat. But God in Christianity, God is supposed to be even more important and more of a focus, even more so than your family members, than your spouse, than your loved ones. That's why you have parents who kick out their kids if they're gay or atheist, or people like myself get divorced when they become atheist or so forth, because God is that much of a focus.
You were married before?
I told you my whole
Jesus, I totally forgot.
That's another video.
Chris is my co-host of Atheist Edge, and I totally forgot you were married before. I am such a bad friend. All right.
Yeah, but the point is that in heaven, you're going to be so focused on God, and this is really shitty to think about on earth, but you're going to be so focused on God and God's glory, you're not even going to be thinking about your friends or loved ones in hell.
Right.
Yeah. It's
It's
same.
not
It goes in
gonna
line with what Carl said, or what Andy said, I think. You're in such a divine light, you don't even care anymore. That's the
Yeah, you
primary.
probably don't even. Yeah.
Gaspar?
Who said you'll be conscious?
Yeah. What do you have to say to that? We went off.
Yeah,
on a
I mean,
tangent, so-
I come from a Christian background, and I remember thinking all that same stuff, and it really given me a lot of trouble. So, I mean, those are the same problems that led to me questioning the faith. I mean, I come from a Mennonite community, no electricity, kerosene lamps. That was where I was raised initially. So, I was, yeah.
Holy shit!
I don't know what the Mennonites.
They're like Amish. They're like.
Let him ask,
Okay, go ahead. Can I guess at what? Tell me what I get wrong. Mennonites are like the Miller Lite,
Miller Lite.
Yes. Miller Lite.
and the Bud Lights and the Coors Lights. The Millerites and the Amish. They shun technology. Tell me if I'm.
Yes, that's right.
They're
Yeah, that's right.
They abhor technology, even the technology that they know about, like transistor radios or combustion engines. Yeah, am I close?
Yeah, that's right. So, and typically they're a little bit more modern than actual Amish people, but the particular community I lived in was very, very old-fashioned, had almost no technology. It was kerosene lamps, it was horses and buggies, no electricity. There was one house that had a phone in case of emergencies. Yeah, basically that's where I came from. So I know, I'm very acquainted with culture shock. I mean, basically, like, what it's like to come out of a culture into this culture is basically like you're a foreigner. You're like you have moved to a foreign country is what it feels like. But also, I had to unbrainwash myself over the course of many years. So I know what that's like too. What?
Make some awesome honey and jelly though at the farmer's
No,
market.
they really do. Yeah, they really do.
Awesome jelly.
Well, this is
Yeah.
not worth it then.
If they brewed beer, then that would be worth it.
You know, the thing is, they're still real open with me. I still go back and visit every now and then, and they're fine with it. You know?
The Amish basically leave they don't ever see you. You're saying that if you leave and you want to go back and see mom and dad, they'll say, hey. I mean, so you're not being shunned?
I don't think Amish shun.
No.
I don't think we do excommunications either. You can come back to an Amish
Well,
family.
to go back and live, you got to be there.
Okay, well, let me also explain something else. What y'all are describing are things that do happen, but you got to remember these communities, they evolve very quickly. In fact, I've witnessed a religious split within the community I lived in my lifetime. What typically happens is that, you know, there are usually a couple males, kind of patriarchal males, who have the philosophical ideas for the whole community, and then some up-and-coming strong personality male maybe challenges his ideas, and so there's a split, and then he takes some people with him. That's how most religions split off anyway, and that happens at a small scale with these little communities, and I witnessed it happen. I witnessed a large amount of the community move to another state because of philosophical disagreements.
Wow. The more I learn about him, the more I definitely want to get you back on. Is there, describe the sexual practices in this community. These patriarchal males, you got one or two heads of the household. Do they scoop up all the other females, or do they?
No,
force
at least not the
to share.
I'm always willing to not give people the benefit of the doubt, so I can say maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've heard something like that, but to my knowledge, no. People are really up each other's asses in that culture, and so the marriage and the courtship is very formal. What happens is, you know, the families discuss an arrangement after two people express interest. They keep the two parties isolated until marriage. They keep them apart. And they typically do it pretty young, around reproductive age, like 16 of age.
So they want to marry by 16, 17, 18?
Yeah. People typically don't wait around too long, you know.
Are women allowed to be religious leaders?
Okay, so short answer, no. Long answer, no one's really a religious leader. I say they're patriarchal males, but that's not a formal thing. It's just that they typically have the powerful personalities. They get up at the church and talk at length about concepts and, you know, what we ought do and what ought not do. But the thing about a typical church service in an Amish or Mennonite community is that they're pretty informal. Anyone can get up. Just about anyone can get up and read out of the Bible and discuss it. And then other than that, they sing songs. They don't burn incense. They don't do Eucharist communion or anything like that.
So if you have no formal church leadership, can you have Mennonite communities in different areas with very different theologies?
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. That happens due to the informality of it. You know, they try to keep it simple, you know, because they like to focus on work. They like to emphasize that work is the service you're doing in the name of God, and they don't want to get too caught up in the concepts. And so that, in my opinion, is what leads to a lot of splitting of ideals. They perhaps have not protected their doctrines in the fashions that, say, the Catholic Church has, and that may have its pros and cons. But it leads to people getting brilliant epiphanies and then thinking they need to take a whole bunch of people with them and start a new community. So yes, there is variation in how they think. You just have to, in order to see it, you actually have to be there with them. Basically, is how it is.
Gaspar, you said that singing was very important in these services. Is it more traditional music, or is Motown acceptable?
It's more it's relatively folk music. It's, you know, it's it's kind of, I don't know. I remember it's kind of a buzzkill and can like kind of really put you in a down mood.
There's a limited miniseries. I think it's a 5-part miniseries on Netflix called The Family. And in the last 24 hours, I've had 3 friends / fans tell me I got to watch it. So I'm going to put that out there for anyone that's going to be listening to this later. I guess The Family, now I looked at the synopsis. It's about a cult that controls the highest levels of government power in the United States. It just so happens, my second book, I did a little chapter on there is a I wouldn't call it a cult. I'd call it something skull and bones, almost like a
Illuminati.
no, kind of like almost a frat.
Yes, the skull and bones from you.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, so basically an Illuminati. It's like, yeah.
That, and it lists off how many ex-presidents, ex-vice presidents, ex-cabinet members have been that are or were a member of this. So I think there's a kernel of truth to this. I haven't even seen the episode, the series yet, but yeah.
My girlfriend and I we put on the first episode of that, and I saw that it was accurately what you described. It's kind of like a Christian fraternity that they're saying is working behind the scenes in the governments. But the thing about that is, it did take the route that you described of like connecting all these faces to it. And my opinion about conspiracy theories, and I'm not using that term in a derogatory way, okay? I believe that there's just corruption anytime you're not looking, because that's just how people are. It doesn't matter if you're, at a fast food joint, the manager's probably stealing money out of the register. And so what happens at the highest levels of government? Okay, that's fine. But the thing about the way a lot of conspiracy theorists reason is they do these dot connecting. Perfect example, Alex Jones, okay? He'll be like, oh yeah, and who's the best friend of the Clintons? This guy. And what do we know about him? He's friends with this guy. And look, he's doing this hand symbol. And this hand symbol is like what this picture of Satan with his goat head is doing. And
yes.
And if you don't watch out, it can be very compelling, and you can find yourself getting excited. Okay, but the truth is, yeah, but the truth is that method of reasoning, which is very common with conspiracy theories, is at best most generously it is a form of induction. It's taking a series of instances and trying to extrapolate a general concept from it. At best, if we're being very generous, okay, and so that's what I'm saying is, with conspiracy theory material, I don't consider it good substance to just be dot connecting. I prefer, people doing things at certain times and places and events that were accounted for, not, oh, he accidentally, here's a photograph of him holding his fingers in a certain way. He's obviously a Satanist, lizard lord. So, that's just, when I was young and maybe still a little bit impressionable and had first come into the modern world, I was just gulping the Kool-Aid of conspiracy theories. And I didn't know what was happening to my mind. And it's that these dot connecting can be really compelling, and they can convince you that the sky is falling. And so people who don't know better get really worked up from it. But anytime I see that, I don't have a strong tolerance for it anymore. And I thought that was maybe the direction that documentary was probably going to be heading. The family.
We got about 18 minutes left. So what I want to do is just go around the horn, and I'm going to end with Gaspar, but I want to just go around the horn. Any safe drowns, anything you want to talk about? We've got a good solid 20 minutes to talk, so you don't have to go fast, but I want to give everyone one more chance to speak. Whoever wants to go first.
Is this on the general thing about
anything you want?
Well, when I look at religion, I say, if religion they got together, they had lunch, they talked, they had a good time, they got brothers together to go feed the poor in the soup kitchen, I don't have no problem with that. I don't have a problem with saying, hey, would you like to come to our church and learn the good news? I don't have a problem with that. My big problem is what is right and wrong? What is sin and not sin? And they're the arbitrators of what's right and wrong. It's right and wrong because God said it was. I'm not arguing with an individual now. I'm arguing with somebody and their leprechaun. And I can't prove their leprechaun doesn't exist, so they get to keep. You get enough of them, their little leprechaun, and it becomes the law. And that's what I feel like I've become. I live in a land where it's as though the leprechaun said, hey, everybody has to wear green. In this one, they wanted, gays couldn't marry. In fact, they had to be put in prison at one point in time. The schools, everyone's going to learn my religion because mine's the right one. To theirs, it's the truth because their book says it's the truth. Well, something's not true because your book says it's true. That's just, it's idiotic.
If you think the apocalypse is coming tomorrow, you probably shouldn't be on a climate change committee.
Yeah, and again, most Christians think this is the end time. I shouldn't say.
I
don't know. There's a
say.
significant amount of Christians that believe things get worse and worse and worse, and all of a sudden, then God comes down. That is their view of what the future will be.
Right.
And they don't care about what the world will be in 50 years, 100 years, because it's going to end before then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't want them making laws. I mean, they should be thought of as delusional and should never be elected.
Carl, do you have anything?
Oh, just again, I'm the one that's least qualified to say anything about any of this. But earlier you were talking about a higher intelligence. If you're comparing it to like a Trump supporter, I've got to say, yeah, there is. And it can be damn near anything.
Higher than any human on Earth.
Okay, that's a little more.
Yeah, exponentially higher than anything we know to be true. Just like Isaac Asimov said, any
civilization advanced enough is indistinguishable from like a god.
Say it one more time.
Any civilization that's advanced enough is indistinguishable to us from a god.
Right. And that's what an ant would think of us if they could comprehend us.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
to them,
That's what I'm talking
a
about.
human being
It doesn't
of God
necessarily have to
is-
be divine intelligence. It has. This could be ET that started the universe. Very possibly. In fact, I would give that more credibility, Bayesian-wise, than anything supernatural,
Yep, yep.
because by its very nature, supernatural is the least probable outcome. So an intelligent alien civilization that created this universe would be way more probable by definition.
But you know what's going to Christians to say that who created the ET
Right.
civilization?
It's
their God again. It
Yeah.
always starts with their God is the ultimate creator of everything.
It's an infinite reduction, infinite
Regress.
regress.
But
So I just took a
it
back
always
one
ends
step,
with theirs.
but still it stands. Okay.
And get
So
one other.
yeah.
This is kind of a what's my line kind of thing I'm going with here, Gaspar. Because of the mythology thing, is Gaspar an alias for Peter Dinklage?
So, sorry for what? Am I a what?
Are you Peter Dinklage?
Am I Peter Dinklage the from Game of Thrones?
Yes.
No.
You do sound taller. Maybe I was off on that.
What made you think he was maybe?
I was going with the mythology thing.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people
Things.
make certain assumptions based on my voice. But I have met a couple people from my community, and I promise you, I am not a midget with a fedora. But I prefer to keep my anonymity.
Have you ever gone to the circus?
No.
I'm completely off. I'm completely
Do
off.
you like gladiator movies?
You smell like.
I know nothing, obviously.
Have you ever drunk Bailey's out of a shoe? No one knows.
Oh man, old Greg. No, I got it. It's old Greg.
That. Oh, he got it.
Yeah.
He got the reference.
Want to go on a club where people wee on each other?
Oh my God, you are officially awesome now.
What's this?
None of these fuckers here caught the reference. No.
Oh man, old Greg, I still give that a watch. Maybe every
There's only
once to 6 months. Every 6 months, I think I watch old Greg.
In fact, it's on Netflix now.
What's that?
Go start episode 1, season 1 of The Mighty Boosh right now. Do it
The
immediately. Mighty Boosh.
Boosh?
Do you like dark, weird British comedy?
British comedy, yeah.
He spells boosh.
OOSH.
You want to know something?
They're zookeepers. Dude, just go watch it. And when you get to Old Greg and the Crack Fox and Charlie, those are the 3. Okay, what, Gaspar?
Okay, so I don't know if does anyone in here have any kids?
2.
Okay, yeah, I have a 10-year-old daughter. I let her watch some stuff on Netflix, but I highly monitor it. She likes to watch the cooking shows. She was watching this cooking elimination show where the hosts it was kind of like American Idol. They had hosts judging what people were cooking. One of the dudes was old Greg.
Mm-hmm.
He's the host of a cooking show. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's old Greg. I believe that's right, yeah. And he was wearing like, he was wearing crazy platform shoes and was all crazy styling, and I was like, whoa, he looks insane. Just
But was
properly-
it actually Noel Fielding, the guy who played Old Greg?
yes,
Holy
yes.
shit!
Yeah, he's hosting some cooking elimination reality show. But yeah,
Then now after the Mighty Boosh, he went on to create Noel Fielding's luxury comedy. It's not as funny, but it's worth a watch as well.
oh really? Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of. I like British comedy. I watched The Fawlty Towers with John Cleese and all that stuff. So
No, this is way better than Fawlty Towers. And I'm a Monty Python fan. I could say that. Oh, Chris or Tilden, saved rounds.
Well, now I'm trying to remember to set my Netflix queue. But so I was thinking about this earlier. So we're talking about free will, and we're talking about simulation theory. And I haven't done probably as much reading about free will as I probably should. But I'm starting to think about free will the way I think about the problem of hard solipsism, where whether or not we're in a simulation or we're a brain in a vat, or we're in some aliens playing The Sims or something like that, when it comes down to it, we really can't know.
Can you explain I know what it is. I actually know what it means, but explain hard solipsism.
Well, we can't. I'm not sure I can explain it well technically.
Let me try, and you tell me if I'm right or not. I could be way off. There is a very good chance that every time I close my eyes, the entire universe disappears, and every time I open my eyes, it's back.
Yeah,
and everything I see and sense and touch and feel is just a figment, and I am the only sentient thing in the universe.
Everything that we know is our brain.
Okay.
Your brain, everything else is just a simulation on your brain.
Right. Yeah. But not only that, but no one else has sentience. Like you are all just.
It's like the only
my
thing
imagination
is just my mind.
That's hard solipsism. Is you don't have your own sentience in your own vat. I'm the only vat.
Yeah.
Okay. But the point being, we can't get outside the system to observe it and tell what else may be going on in it, if there's anything outside of it. And I think that free will is the same way, because either libertarian free will, which is I have free will as we come with it, or under determinism, I think I have free will, but I can't possibly think otherwise because that has been determined.
Basically, it's the illusion of free will.
Yeah, illusion.
Either you have free will, or you have the illusion of free will. But those are the only two things you have.
There's gradients, maybe. Like there's classical pure free will where you're free to think, do anything, or you're limited in some way. Like you're in heaven and you don't want to commit evil because of God's grace and presence. That is a limitation of free will.
I think the limit to me is I can't fuck Olivia Newton-John. That's the limit of my free will.
She's still alive.
She won't let me have her. Okay,
you'll make it.
Yeah,
she wasn't that good.
Physical.
All I can say is her little "let's get physical" video was pretty.
Yeah, but you better hurry up. She's probably almost dead.
It's okay. I'll just put her tape on.
All right.
You know,
is that a limitation?
Yes! Leave it to the comedian to go rock the edge, man. Necrophilia. Okay. Chris, what else?
That was the main point.
That usually ends the conversation right there. The necrophilia.
Yeah. So I haven't actually done a whole lot of reading about compatibilism to see if that solves anything. But the more I put out there's a thought experiment, and maybe there's more philosophically minded people who could point out problems with this line of thinking. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Is that whether or not I either have free will or I can't not think I have free will. And either way, I seem to only be able to operate as if I do have free will. So
that's mind blower right there.
So it's a fun conversation to have.
Man.
What would change if my mind was changed on the free will side?
Well, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. There's my insomnia fuel right there. All right, till then.
Okay. Hey, I'm reading a book right now by John Loftus called Why I Became an Atheist. I've got more bookmarks in that book than I've had in any other atheist book I've read so far. He's going to be here in town for our
September 6th.
Our Atheist Christian Book Club, where we read one atheist book and we read a Christian book back and forth. But this time we don't really have to read a book. We're going to have John Loftus here and the other guy,
Travis Dickinson.
Yeah, and I guess it's going to be a debate.
Well, it'll be a debate, but we'll get a huge Q&A session.
Do y'all have any of that going on in your area?
Are you in you're in Minnesota, right? Gaspar?
Who? Oh, no. Why? What makes you think I'm in Minnesota?
Someone looked you up just now and said you were in Minneapolis.
Okay, well, they're just wrong. And there's not a way to look me up and find out where I am, but I am willing to tell you I'm in Texas.
Guessing cities. And you tell us.
But anyhow, do y'all have any of that like going on in your area? Do y'all meet with Christians and debate things, or
no, I don't really do that. Most of the talks I do are on the internet. I'm not really forthcoming about my philosophy in real life. That's why I have an anonymous account. In real life, I just do my very best to get along with people as much as I can. And so my persona and avatar as so-called Gaspar is where I'm really, really honest.
Have you appeared on any shows bigger than us, bigger than 10,000 subscribers?
I was some time ago in a I believe a streamed hangout on the Non Sequitur show and talked to Steve a little bit, but then I had a falling out with Steve and let's see, but I think we're doing okay again. We're getting along again, I think. And the other thing,
tight friends with
what?
Him? I'm very tight friends with him. So if I would love to be an inroad because you're a fountain of knowledge. Really, if you two are having squabbles, then I would love to set that aside and utilize your talent.
Yeah. So, I mean, I personally, I have opinions. Well, I kind of side with Steve and his split that he had with Kyle. I think he was ripped off. That's my opinion. I don't know all the facts. I wasn't there, but it sure looks like it. Yeah. We
were the first atheist channel to come out. Now I don't like tribalism. I don't like the us versus them mentality. But I was the first atheist YouTube channel to endorse his claim to his the prophets. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to be on here again for sure. I have a channel as well, and I've been a little bit busy this summer. Haven't been at my place a whole lot, but now that we're back in in the regular part of the year, I'm going to be making a lot more videos myself, and it's more or less going to be a podcast format. But the other thing is what was it? I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, y'all were talking about compatibilism, and I kind of let that slip away in free will and determinism. And I believe you asked if there was any way to rationalize compatibilism, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Before we just let that go, and I know we're running out of time. I would say more or less. Okay, so we can assume that they're mutually exclusive, and that if both of them are true, they're contradictory. Or if we wanted to try to resolve that dilemma, we could say that they have different applications at different levels of complexity. For example, an analogy I would give in favor of compatibilism would be that relationship between hardware and software. So we could say that all the software we interact with is actually determined by a bunch of on and off circuits on the circuit board, and that there are actually no buttons to click, no boxes to check, or no friends to add. But there's a certain utility in observing the user interface. And so there, it may be a similar relationship between our neurological determinism, which is a bunch of neurons firing off in a predetermined way. But then also, even if you want to call it illusion, the illusion of consciousness and the personality still may have utility in how you interact with your environment. Here's another example. If you have a tumor, you're probably not going to go visit a psychologist. But if you're having problems in your your relationship, like your marriage or something, you're not going to go see a neuroscientist. You're probably going to go see a marriage counselor or a psychologist. And so two different paradigms are going to come into play there. And it may not be a question of whether they're metaphysically true. It may be a matter of utility. So that's what I'll say about compatibilism. You see?
Damn, I don't know. How have you escaped me for the last 2.5 years? Because I feel like at this point, someone with your level of philosophical knowledge, you should have already been on my radar for some reason.
I've spent,
what is your YouTube channel?
It's called The Cult of Pure Reason, and that's the name of my Facebook group as well.
Okay. Someone remember that. Wait, I gotta put
I'll
that
post a link.
Yeah, send me a link.
All right.
That'd be
Cult
awesome.
of Free Reason?
Yeah, The Cult of Pure Reason.
The Cult of Pure Reason.
It's a slight play on words. So like, there's Kant's book, The Critique of Pure Reason, and then there was actually a Cult of Reason that, kind of happened in France, and it's kind of an interesting case study to read about.
That is incredible. Okay, my plugs. What is it, September 5th or 6th, children? 6th. September 6th. If you're watching this, I bet I'm willing to put money on September 6th has gone and went. So it's probably already on our channel. If not, though, you can go to Atheist Christian Book Club on Facebook, and it will be broadcast live on September 6th. It'll be John Loftus, who are flying down from Cincinnati. I think, yeah. We're flying him down to debate Travis Dickinson. There's going to be a Q&A afterwards. It's going to be great times. And then I'm going to get to interview him the following day for our channel. What else? The prior book club, they actually, I don't know, they must have been scraping the bottom of the barrel, but they actually had me in the hot seat for my second book, Pulling Back the Green Curtain. If that will definitely be on the channel by the time you see this. So go look for that in our library. It's a 2-part series, hour long each. Oh yeah, you guys carried me good, boy. It was, yeah. And in fact, it was kind of softball questions. I was expecting way tougher questions. I think they were easy on me. Anyway, they grilled me on my book, and they spent most of the time commenting on my strong arguments. And what else do we have going on? That is it, I think. All right, guys. So that concludes this episode. Gaspar, please don't be a stranger. And we would love to have you back. And I'm going to put in a word for, you said you and Steve are already on better speaking terms now?
Yeah, I think we're doing all right at this point. Yeah.
All right. So I've only been on Non Sequitur once, and that was during a Veterans Day Atheist in a Foxhole segment. And I doubt very highly that I'll ever be invited back on Non Sequitur now,
Yeah.
given the current circumstances.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, you wouldn't want to go on anyway. It's not the same. It's just the name now. So
yeah, I mean, name the 2 people that come on the show regularly now. Jimmy Snow, who I'm still friends with, I hope, but I have some major reservations with him. And again, it's not about tribalism or us versus them or in-group, out-group, but the fact that he comes on Kyle's show so much now, it almost feels like he's endorsing Kyle, and he has some sort of inside baseball knowledge on what's going on, like he's actually seen the books, but he won't tell anyone anything. I don't want to get into the minutia. There's a lot of inside drama bullshit going on. And who's the other one? Oh, no, I'm not going to even bring up the others. All right, Gaspar. So thank you, and we would love to have you back.
yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, I'd totally be interested in coming back.
Awesome. All right, take care now.